Thanks for joining me, folks. And my name is Adam Hicks. I am our field TT. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about the application process modernization that Morpheus affords you for the DevOps world. This is kind of a big term. In the previous section, when we were talking with Hisham, there were some questions that kind of informed me that you guys are going to want to know a little bit more about what goes into creating an instance. What services can we offer up? This is perfectly on point when we think about application modernization. What is it that people are building? How are they constructing it? What architectures can we support, and can we afford, and can we allow? So I'm going to go deconstruct an instance, what goes into it, what can go into it, what can be done. Sneak preview, it's a lot. Application blueprints as well. So when we start talking about in-tier architectures, full end-to-end environments that need to be deployed at the ready, how we can template those out and make them easy to go provision into the cloud. When we really think about DevOps and modern parlance as well, I think one of the things that comes up is really modern workflows. What is actually happening? Where does a tool like this sit? If Morpheus is really just a cloud abstraction on top of all your clouds, then by and large, it's the resource that is getting called to go create those environments, kind of keeping on the topic of instances and blueprints. Well, we've actually built a Terraform provider, and now you can introduce those workflows that you're comfortable with as well around cloud native tooling and allow Morpheus to do the heavy lifting across that heterogeneous infrastructure. Or you can also alternatively use API and CLI. So I'll talk in depth about that. Lastly, Kubernetes. Kubernetes has hit the enterprise space with a splash, even though it's been around in the wings for quite some time. And we've decided to tackle that head on. We call it out as a separate section, even though in my mind, it is simply another cloud endpoint. But because there's so much there, and because it is sort of a foundational change in the way that I think that IT and Dev are working together in the modern enterprise. Afterwards, I'll kick this over to David Estes again, like Hisham did, and I'll have him pick up a little bit on roadmap. I'll let him introduce his slides at that time. So for now, I'll go ahead and I'll end the show, and I'll hop into a live environment, and I'll start going through the show and tell that I just mentioned and discussed with you guys.
Excuse me, I have a question before you go into the details. I mean,
sure.
When I start, so the deployment of Morpheus platform takes minutes. You told at the very beginning, Brad, like 15 minutes to install the product. But actually, the initial configuration, because all of you are showing is, massive. I mean, you can do practically everything, but, I already have environments like Ansible and many other tools already in place, probably. So, and I need to migrate from these tools manage these tools through your solution and also build on top of it. So how much does it take for a average user to start using the platform, to become proficient in and getting advantage of the platform?
Yeah. So hopefully this section, as I go in, you'll start understanding a little bit about what goes into that. So you're right in line with exactly what I'm going to be tackling by and large. In many of my most simple use cases, I'll walk into a POC, a proof of concept with a customer. We'll have Morpheus installed in minutes, connected, at least, in a rudimentary fashion, connected to something like a VMware environment, where we inventory all the resources, we inventory including templates, virtual images, and we're provisioning in under an hour. That is not an unrealistic expectation. When it does come to the kind of full suite of offerings, as you mentioned, a little bit more goes into it. But what's great about Morpheus is, and Brad stole a term from me, or turn a phrase from me, so I'm going to steal one from him. He has often said Morpheus is like the self-leveling cement. So we don't need to go and do a lot of refactor of the endpoints that you have. We're really just going and natively integrating into them. And then it's really a matter of understanding, now how do I put that into the right place inside of Morpheus to make it meaningful to get to that end result that I want? So without further ado, let me jump into the library. You guys saw the instance catalog, but how does something get in there? And there was a question about, where do those sit as a repository? To Hisham's point, we do give you a lot out of the box, but what excites a lot of customers is how they can bring their own, right? And that's a lot of what you're asking. I think that's what a lot of our customers are interested in as well. How can they represent one of their services their way that can go anywhere? And the library is where this starts. This is the individual service layer. Services can be simple. They can be multi-node types of services as well. I do have one here called Apache. And if I pick on the Apache, before I drill in, I'll explain a little bit about what you're going to see. You're going to see that an instance is comprised of layouts, one or many, and a layout is comprised of node types or alternatively spec templates. This is where we get this almost infinite extensibility into cloud native description languages that we might find. So if I drill into my Apache, you'll see the different layouts that I have here, both on-prem, cloud, and even into, what again is becoming very popular, this sort of cloud native Kubernetes type of way. Very simply, in my VMware or my Acropolis hypervisor types of layouts, or even this one, really what it is it's a wrapper for a virtual image of some form. Azure's, it's a referent to a marketplace image. VMware's, Morpheus has inventoried the VM templates, and so it's a pointer over to, and if I drill in, you can see at this node layer, what I've done is I've crafted a kind of a definition layer around this Morpheus Ubuntu 14.04 VM template that Morpheus has synced across from the VMware environment. I've set some metadata. So, as you saw when Hisham went through the self-service portal, I had a bunch of options, including, I could set up a load balancer, go build a VIP in front of the service or multitude of VMs that I may want to instantiate. This allows me to do that dynamically. What are the ports that I would actually want to go map in that VIP? I can do scripts, I can do file templates, etc. For it, I can also define if you're going to push code through Morpheus, allow it to be the arbiter of your code releases. Where does it put that artifact or the Git clone? We support just about any way you may want to push code in there. And we can even do phase-based execution of automation around that. I go back up one layer. You mentioned Ansible. If I show you a little bit about what goes into this layout, what we see is that I have a layout inside of my Apache instance type that's pointing to this node, and it's also running a workflow. I'll dig more into that in a minute, but that's important, right? Because I have an option. I certainly could have baked Apache into my virtual image, but I alternatively can have very vanilla image sets, and I can push workflows across to do the configuration of that instance and what I need to for software. So frequently I see config management as that realm where DevOps likes to play. So that becomes very important, right? Because it gives full control over the definition of how that comes to an end state.
Excuse
if
me.
We decide, go ahead.
Just for a second, going back to the template state that you were looking at, have you guys looked at integrating with something like Packer or something like that to actually automate the process of getting that initial building block deployed out?
Absolutely. So in Morpheus, you'll find a virtual image library. This is where synced as well as uploaded images live. And so we do have a number of customers that will use Packer externally, and they'll simply push those templates up to Morpheus for distribution.
I should just want to add to that, Adam. There's also an image builder tool under tools that actually leverages Packer-like functionality. Because we've built in native hypervisor consoles, we can actually issue instructions to boot commands, things like that. So we've actually added built-in capabilities for several clouds. We're adding more where we can automate that build process and rotate those images out on a few month cycles. So if you want a build process that runs and cycles out, you can do that.
Nice. Is there life cycle management to that as well to handle the patching and stuff like that?
Yeah, so some people do it a little differently. So one example is you can basically have a catalog item for a VM, say it's a CentOS, and you want the image builder to run it every 2 weeks or something like that via workflow or a job. it can do that and automatically swap that base image out or golden image. So if you want to ensure that base image is updated.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So back into the library, where I think it starts getting more interesting, especially as we're in this sort of hybrid cloud. When we talk hybrid cloud, what does that mean? Is not just our ability to do it around traditional IaaS, but even the ability to template this out around things like, instead of a node, a pointer again over to a spec template. These could be ARM, they could be CloudFormation, they could also be Kubernetes or Helm themselves. We also have node types. If I go back into my Apache at this layer, we have node types that are Apache Kubernetes layouts. This one I really like because this gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of the options. I actually have 2 declaratives. And if I go into this layer, I can actually see I put this in here instead of hooking it up to a repository, but I can see how I can pull variables from either the deployment time variables and the deployment time metadata of the instance, or I can even create custom options. I can create custom user input fields that I can pipe into various aspects of this, just like I could do into my automation workflows. So let's take a quick look at the automation section. What does it mean for me to have the service catalog entity run its own workflow to go configure its own state? So our workflow engine, we've got 2 types. We've got a provisioning and an operational. Mr. Estes did mention operational workflows. These are standalone series of tasks as contrast with a provisioning workflow. Provisioning workflow allows me to run tasks at various events in the life cycle of an instance. It doesn't matter what the instance is. Now, what the task does may depend on what the instance is, but these tasks, these lifecycle events are going to exist for all instances. Provision, you'll have a start service, stop service event that you can drive through the interface, deploy, reconfigure, and tear down. Tasks live over in this area, and if I open this wizard up, I see that I have a myriad of options for how I might want to go run those tasks as part of a workflow. It could be, like I did in the case of Apache, an Ansible playbook. My Ansible playbook is going to run by having a connection to a Git-based repo. So I simply say, which repo do I want and which playbook do I want to run? It's as simple as that. And then because I'm targeting the resource, I'm going to ensure that that's going to run against the resource repeatedly. We can push variables into our Ansible run command as when Morpheus acts as your Ansible controller. We do some powerful things with Chef, with Puppet and SaltStack as well. So it's not as though we're gluttons for Ansible. We even integrate with Ansible Tower. So again, self-leveling cement. We try to come and take what technical debt you may already have, give you options to improve upon that, but we're going to allow you to get up and running very quickly, as you asked before. Many of these also, when we talk DevOps, one of the things that comes up quite a bit is SCM, GitOps, right? So how do I make sure that as I'm going and I'm presenting versions of these different library instances that I'm keeping them up to date, that I'm able to iterate and version them properly? So versions for us are at multitudes of layers, right? Not only is it the virtual image, maybe it's only the virtual image, but it could also be at that workflow layer. It could also be at the different layout layers. We give you mechanisms to version those properly with your SEM. Through and throughout. So where it goes when we go beyond just a single service. So you've got the idea that you can create something that's really cool. And while I showed you was Apache, it's a single node type of service. You can represent complex ones too. Database clusters, Hadoop clusters. You could have a 100 node cluster represented as a service catalog item. And give the end user the ability to scale out how many nodes that they actually want to go run that workflow on. Where I want to go though, by and large, when I start talking about application modernization is, okay, not just an individual service, but how do I tie them together? Kind of classic story that, we talk, and we said it before, is the N-tier architecture. We do have an application that we talk a lot about. It is a CMS-based app, And Hisham previously showed you one that was running, one that he had spun up, and one was created. But here's how we might be able to go template this out. This is a 2-tier version of this web app. And what I've done is I've actually created underneath it 3 different environments that I could select from when I go to self-serve this application. One in Azure, one in VMware, and one in AWS. If I go pick on the VMware one, I see a lot of VMware specific configurations. This could be pushing a container-based layout into a Kubernetes namespace that I have access to. This could be, in the case of AWS, if I flip over here, I'll find that this has been defined as deploying EC2 instances. Now, just like in our, Hisham showed you in our self-service catalog, you have options to go deploy code, even optionally run some startup commands, go create the load balancer, the VIP. This could be an F5 or a NetScaler on-prem or an Avi, an ELB, an ALB, an Azure load balancer. We work in a native fashion with most of the major load balancers out there. You can set scaling across it. This could be cloud native scaling or Morpheus. And again, Morpheus as sort of your single source of truth, being able to control the algorithm in a very similar manner across your clouds is a powerful construct. So I have all of those all within this wizard that I can pin to an environment. Then subsequently, I can have my self-service user go and define a single permutation when they want to go deploy. When they go to self-serve this, they simply walk through the wizard and they say, yes, I'm a member of the demo group. I want to deploy this application on the AWS cloud. If there's an environment selector, that will allow me to pre-fill things. It also allows me to lock certain fields, pin them, so to speak, to certain selections if I want to. Limit RAM, force horizontal scaling instead of allowing for vertical sizing to the user, et cetera, et cetera. If I go to my AWS, or my MySQL, sorry, you'll actually see that I have a representation of those more complex layouts that we talked about too, multi-node, master slave. We can also use RDS and RDS-based layouts. I could have something that is purely PaaS defined if I wanted to add another tier. Let's say I want a, let's go with a messaging tier. And this isn't even going to be entirely true because I would use Elasticache in front of a database, but I picked a name. And this right here is going to allow me to pick a similar permutation, add this. The backing is a CFT. It's a CloudFormation template. So that's the complexity of Morpheus and what it allows in that hybrid cloud context. Now, again, users aren't necessarily going to want to drive this through a GUI. Some are, and many will. But a lot of people this day and age are going to want to follow DevOps workflows. So as they go through building an application like Spud, what you'll see, I'll just pick on Spud like I did with the blueprint. I'll give it a name. I'll pick the group in the cloud, and it will autofill this permutation. Morpheus does run some configuration checks, make sure that we have the information that we needed to fill this out. You could leave something available, right? Application injection variables, you could leave those available and force the user to fill those out. So check. We're all healthy here. I could actually go take this raw version of this and export this YAML or JSON. So when we're living in this as code-based world, right, and it's gone beyond just infrastructure as code, it really has turned into this idea of how do I define as much as I can as code? This is what I can go and I can put into, say, a pipeline. I could put this into Jenkins and have Jenkins simply call Morpheus. I could put this into Azure DevOps, GitLab CI, any of those tool sets that people have found to be friendly and familiar, or alternatively into the Terraform provider that we're building around the edge of Morpheus now. So familiar tooling, familiar DSL, familiar abstraction layer, and simply control your applications on demand as code, build and tear down dynamically. One of the great things about Kubernetes, to kind of pivot, into that as a discussion point was a similar idea, right? Weaveworks came out with the term of GitOps. I think I'm seeing in the industry now that a lot of people are gravitating to this idea of GitOps. It's the same same kind of thing that I'm talking about right here, that I can include the definition of my application and control my application lifecycle simply through API calls. We also do have a command line interface. So we've got a multitude of ways that you can interact with Morpheus programmatically. When we pivot into Kubernetes, though, Morpheus has gone a little bit of a different direction with Kubernetes. So where we're the self-leveling cement in terms of what are the clouds that you can build across, what is the heterogeneous infrastructure you can build across. When it comes to Kubernetes, sure, we can integrate. We can also create. We found that there was a sweet spot for us because we do such a good job already with the lifecycle management of, call it, middleware, virtual machines, some of the IaaS constructs that actually have to be there with Kubernetes. Kind of anecdotal, I was with one of our strategically large customers and I said, what is the most common middleware request you get to deploy? Their answer was Kubernetes. It wasn't Tomcat, it wasn't MySQL or standard databases. It was Kubernetes. Their operations team, this for them saves them a lot. While I can represent that as an instance, and I could represent a Kubernetes cluster as a blueprint, we found that we could give them a lot more operational value by allowing them to build it more dynamically here. Whether it is allowing some RBAC and some governance around who can do what in the public cloud using managed Kubernetes services, AKS, EKS are here today, or what we call MKS, sort of code name, right? This is our builder. And just like you get from the provisioning wizard, you can march through, pick a group, pick a cloud, where do you want to put it, give it a name for the cluster and the resource, and then you have a wizard to go choose this from. We have included an architecture that is Cloud Native Computing Foundation compliant. So we have run through all their tests and we are a member of the CNCF. We give you even an HA cluster builder that will allow you to go configure a 3-master cluster with as many workers as you like down here with this selector. We're using Ubuntu, Weave is the CNI, and OpenEBS. It's a pretty simple cluster. We do have some things that we ensure are there too, FluentD, FluentBit for log aggregation, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But one of the things that we've also done is, just like I showed you in the library around instances, is that you can build your own cluster layout too. So if you've got an architecture that you want to bring, you can do that. Alternatively, if you already have a cluster, we can hook up to that. Bring your own cluster endpoint and token. We'll go ahead and add that in and allow you to use Morpheus as the gateway to administer as well as deploy to that cluster. If I dig into
the spirit of time, we may need to tie this out quick and maybe do a next session, next field day. We may go do an entire Kubernetes deep dive because I think we could easily spend time on it.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I appreciate the time, guys. I'll say that the real art of what Morpheus is trying to get, though, and I hope you guys see this, is it goes back to that self-service value prop. And when we talk about DevOps, self-service in and of itself is a DevOps concept. So the feedback loops that can be driven from allowing self-service around those service layer abstractions inside of Morpheus is kind of a rich tie into a DevOps culture inside of an organization, and I hope that you see that. I'll turn it over to David Estes because I think he likely does have quite a few of what's coming in the DevOps section that is going to be very interesting for you to hear.
Yeah, a few things to go over really quick. I know we're running a little tight on time, so I'll be quick. One of the things that Morpheus is developing next from the DevOps perspective is Morpheus's Project Scribe. And what that is basically a new DSL for blueprinting infrastructure applications and objects. You've seen our DSL, our YAML JSON base. We're expanding that and enhancing it significantly. So we're going to actually support HashiCorp's configuration language, maybe JavaScript, different types of programming representations for how you want to define and build that. Increasing that consumability and how you want to approach your infrastructure as code, or as we call it, everything as code. Because when you start pairing those things with Morpheus, you can do a lot more than just deploying infrastructure and cloud native services. You can actually tie into your Ansible playbooks more easily, configure what workflows are run in a much cleaner way than you could before. We're very excited about that and excited to show that off. The other thing we're going to be doing is the concept of projects. You've seen the concept of groups where you can organize your instances by groups, but projects are broader. It allows you to define any Morpheus object to be scoped into a project. It could be a complex blueprint or app. It could be a larger set of infrastructure or multiple apps related to a team or project within Morpheus. It can also represent other objects besides just compute and cloud native service workloads. It can represent users, tenants, anything that an MSP might use as a scribe template for onboarding a subtenant. They'll be able to do that. Roles, tons of things that you can do in the API will be representable as a project. So very excited about that.